And number C is, I'm trying to remember what we were calling it. Lost my spot. Townhouse, small scale apartments, 3-plex and 4-plex.
And we don't include accessory dwelling units on this list because it's those are mentioned in our blueprint Denver. And so because there's guidance for them to be permitted citywide, that's why they're not on this list currently. So it is focusing on those 2 to 20 unit structures.
Perfect. So I saw a lot of movement on that one as answers came in. It looks like those kind of 3 to 4 plex option, that number 2 is the one that received, I guess, the most of the votes, with all the other ones coming in as a tie. If anyone would like to share some thoughts on why they may prefer one over the other, or even what they think that could look like, please feel free to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, and I'll just say, for me personally, again, I don't really have a problem with any of these. I think that depending on the precise location and context, that any of these, in my opinion, could be appropriate.
Perfect. Thank you.
Can I ask for the University Hills people, if you wouldn't mind sharing, it's okay if you're not comfortable, but which ones you all selected? Okay, it's okay if not.
I'm going to swap us over to our next slide here. Alrighty, so this one we're looking at location criteria. Where and under what circumstances should these housing options be permitted in your neighborhood? So this is kind of an extension of the last one we were looking at. So kind of with some of those built forms and building types in mind, where those might fit within your neighborhood. Or I guess in this case, within our neighborhood, since we're looking at 2 different neighborhoods. With that, again, it looks like we have another 3-way tie. Oh, still moving a little bit. Oh, that changes things. Now we have a clear one in the lead here, which is when development is complete with is compatible with the neighborhood's existing design character, was the preferred choice there with G. On large lots, received 18%, and then along large collector / streets also received 18%. If anyone wants to share how or why this G answer is of particular importance, or how you see maybe that looking with the existing character of your neighborhood, would be awesome.
Yeah, I'll just say again that I think that the affordable housing and development, I think, is something that needs to happen. I would prefer to have development within existing neighborhoods rather than just continuing to sprawl out, you know, and into the suburbs. Obviously, Denver doesn't control what happens in the suburbs, but I think if the city of Denver and the neighborhoods like Goldsmith and other neighborhoods can absorb more housing, that would be beneficial overall and for the environment, et cetera. And if something can be done that's compatible with the existing neighborhood's design character, that would be great. I understood, you know, Libby, you mentioned earlier that the ADUs are not part of the polls here, but I do think that ADUs would be a great way to both preserve the neighborhood's existing character as well as being able to add affordable housing to a neighborhood.
Perfect. Thank you. And I have one more question on growth and community benefits before I flip back to the PowerPoint to introduce the second topic for tonight. So this one is just on trade-offs. So adding missing middle housing options into existing neighborhood involves trade-offs. Please tell us which of the following are most important to you. Select your top three, and we'll go from there.
My screen is showing the missing middle housing images that we went over a minute ago.
Oh, weird. Try
don't know if other people are-
refreshing your web page and see if it syncs up to now the fourth option.
No, that didn't do it. I don't know if other people are having that issue too, or if it's just me.
I'm also having that issue, and I did refresh. I still have the previous question. I don't have the current question.
Huh. Let me go ahead and exit out and reshare it with you all and see if that solves our issue. Give me just 1 second. Stop my share. All right, let me share my screen with you all again.
It's working for me now.
Perfect. Good. Perfect. If there's any other technical issues like that, let me know. It seems like exiting out of it on my end and getting it back up sorted it out. So I can always do that again if need be. And thank you all for being flexible with Zoom and with polling and all that. It's most appreciated.
Can I ask a question? When you talk about middle housing, how do you relate that in terms of percentage of income related to the AMI? I get a little bit confused because whenever you read articles in the paper, we're always referencing AMI as kind of a benchmark for determining what's affordable or not. So where on an AMI would you consider an income for middle housing?
And I can take this, Libby, and correct me if you have a slightly different working definition. For our purposes tonight, missing middle is referring to the housing type. So looking at those things like duplexes, townhomes, 3 to 4 plex, and small apartments. Whereas the AMI piece, we'll be looking actually in our second session, which we're going to flip through to in just a minute, is more looking at some of those income factors or who can afford housing and those types of things. But for these couple of slides, it's more looking at the type of housing, not necessarily the income qualifying to move into it. Is that correct, Libby?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that helps. But with the cost of our housing being so high today, it would seem that any single unit or single family house is automatically only available to people with that high AMI. You know what I'm saying? So therefore, I do get a little bit confused when you talk about middle housing, because it would seem that people without a high enough AMI are automatically bounced out of single-family housing. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, and I think that's the purpose of missing middle is like, you know, instead of having a bunch of single family homes, there's duplexes and triplexes that in theory might be smaller square footage. So it might make them, even though they're not capital A affordable, like restricted to a certain income, they're maybe cheaper than that single family home would be, if that makes sense.
Yes, that helps. Thank you.
And two questions, I guess, we'll kind of be looking at some of those ways to keep things affordable. So some of those restrictions or things along those lines as well. So we will be touching on that as well tonight in just a couple of minutes. It looks like for this one, keeping housing prices lower and limiting involuntary placement, limiting involuntary displacement are the two most frequently selected, which will segue nicely into our second half of our discussion. Next was maintaining consistent design features and minimizing demolition and landfill waste came in as a tie. So if anyone has anything to expand on those, otherwise we'll be expanding on them a little bit as we move into our next questions. I'm going to switch my screen shares while people think. If you have anything, feel free to shout it out. Let me get that PowerPoint back up for you all. Juggle screens here. Alrighty, is everyone seeing the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Perfect. So now we're moving into housing and the economy. So kind of touching on some of those affordability pieces a little bit more in depth here. So what we've heard in our past engagements are affordable housing is difficult to find in the near southeast, and new developments are usually market rate residential, which is a perfect segue off of our last discussion point here. The increase in the cost of housing is causing gentrification and a lack of diversity in the area. Maintaining existing designated affordable housing and constructing more is a community priority. And so what we're asking tonight, so the following questions will help us understand the community's priorities for affordable housing, preventing displacement, and helping those experiencing homelessness. So with that, I'm going to get us back to the poll. That's the word I'm looking for. Let me get that up for you all. And alrighty, you should all be seeing this question now on your screen. Affordable housing, what types of affordable housing should be prioritized? Select all that apply. So we're looking at senior housing, which is for 55 plus, units with 3+ bedrooms. We selected this because that's specifically looking at affordable housing more for families, with those increased bedrooms. For sale units, so affordable for sale, permanent supportive housing, which is typically for those transitioning from homelessness, and then other. One thing to mention that units for the lowest incomes for that AMI number, we're looking kind of that 30% area median income.
I don't see units for those with the lowest incomes as an option, or maybe no one selected it. Is that why it's not on the screen?
It should, that could be, or I
Maybe it wasn't put
missed it.
in.
Yeah, I may have missed it. Huh. Yeah, I apologize for that. It's on my, yeah, I must have missed it when typing.
Could we just use E other since?
Yep. Yeah, if you just put it in other, and we'll record it in the notes that it was a missed option, and that's what those are applying towards. I apologize for missing that option, but thanks for working with me on that.
Libby, what does E represent so I can just make a note?
Yeah, it's units for those with the lowest income, so like 30% AMI.
Okay, I've got it captured.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to clarify. I think I know that AMI, I think it means area median income. I just want to verify
That's correct.
that. Okay, thank you.
And I believe that off the top of my head, that area median income, like 100% for Denver for one person is maybe about 73,000 or something like that. So a family would be even more, just for perspective, what that number is.
Right, thank you.
And with that, we can open it up for discussion. Again, sorry about that missed option, but I appreciate you all putting that in other and working with me on that. It looks like permanent supportive housing got 29%, affordable for sale units came in just after, and then the tie between the top senior housing and the affordable housing for lowest incomes, which are certainly overlap between those two categories. If anyone wants to expand on their answers, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, one thing I'll say is that the permanent supportive housing, I think, is a great thing. One thing that I think would be really great is if it could be sort of an inclusive type of environment where it's like, let's say there's people with disabilities that were older people that need support in some way or another that are living in a certain housing complex, that I think it would be great to have people that do not need support that could also live in the same community or the same building, and where they could sort of be supportive of each other.
Certainly. And in that, are you thinking a mix of incomes as well, or just a mix of different abilities and age ranges, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, I think it could be either or. It could be, if it's limited to a certain income group, but some of those people have some type of disability and other people don't, I would be fine with that. Or, if there were just a broad range of incomes, and again, some people having some need for support and other people don't. But, I think that there's been examples around the country where they have that type of inclusive environment. I think it's beneficial for not only the people that need support, but also the people that can help support. It's just it's something that psychologically I think is a good thing all around.
Perfect. That I'm flipped to our next slide, but feel free to jump in with any comments or discussion points you have.
Could I ask a question? How, again, does for sale units, how does that integrate with the other types of housing proposed? It seems that all of the other types are more rental type situations. Is it possible that when you're saying for sale units, you're talking about programs where the units, a certain amount of a rental is applied toward down payment, or a transitioning from rental to ownership? Because there are those kinds of programs.
So that could be one option, but I think there are also for sale units that are geared toward people at certain area median income levels. And so I think maybe that's what we were thinking with that. So this would be like condos or townhomes that are specifically for those that only make a certain percentage of the area median income, are the only ones who could potentially buy those units.
Yeah, and on that regard, I would have to agree that an owner in any neighborhood, I think, always adds a certain stabilizing factor in terms of there's kind of more of a buy-in or sense of belonging, or feeling like they're in it for the long haul when they're an owner, whether it's a single family home, a duplex, a unit in a larger building or whatever. So I think that whole psychology of a sale, meaning you're an owner in that neighborhood or that district, is an important factor to consider.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm gonna flip to our next slide. We have two more for the next like 7 to 10 minutes. So for our next one, kind of addressing displacement, what strategies should be prioritized to help prevent involuntary displacement? Please select all that apply. And again, this is heavily related to the one that we were looking at before. So we have more market rate units, more affordable units, support for existing homeowners with maintenance, financial assistance for home buyers, preserving unsubsidized affordable housing. So this is what we refer to as naturally occurring affordable housing. Community control of land. Now we look at things like community land trusts or land bank programs to help preserve that, rental assistance programs or other. And since select all that applies doesn't mean that one solution would have to apply to all affordable housing in either of these neighborhoods. It could be a mix of different strategies. So it's not an all or nothing selection. And also, if anyone wants to jump in before we're at the end of the poll, don't feel as though you have to wait for me to say anything. Just feel free to take yourself off mute. So. Looks like we have strong preference for more affordable units, just upping the housing stock there, financial assistance for home buyers, and then rental assistance programs, kind of covering a bunch of different strategies. If anyone has any clarifying questions or anything along those lines, let us know, and Libby and I will do our best to answer those.
Once again, I'm going to make a comment that I'm always a little bit leery when the proposal shows up for market rate units. What I tend to read into that is developer and probably larger scale developers, whether they're local or state or national. And I think that where the devil's in the details is that, yes, they may build them originally as market rate, but that doesn't mean that that development or those units in time don't reach unaffordable levels. And so therefore, I'm always leery of attracting more and more large-scale developers, especially ones that aren't really immersed in Denver in the community to begin with, where they don't have a stake in it. So I'm always going to throw my weight behind supporting the little guy, the more grassroots effort at stabilizing homeowners and home ownership, rather than supporting large developers coming in and supplying housing. So I've said my 2 cents.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Any other comments or questions or anything before I flip to our last poll question? Switching over now. So for our last one, looking at specifically homelessness, what types of temporary shelter models would best fit within your neighborhood, or in this case, multiple neighborhoods? Select all that apply. So our options are tiny houses, which is looking at a temporary planned residential community, usually composed of 100 square foot shelter structures, safe outdoor spaces, which are planned and managed encampments, congregate shelters, which are a 24/7 shelter refuge, safe parking spaces, which is a safe legal parking locations for a resident who's living in a vehicle, non-congregate shelters, short-term shelters such as hotels or motels, And then lastly, we have inclement weather shelters, which is for emergency activations for storms or extreme cold or things along those lines. If you have any questions about any of those models, I'll do my best to answer. If I can't find an answer now, we'll do our best to get you one in the next couple of days. It looks like we have a preference for the tiny homes, the safe outdoor spaces, as well as the safe parking spaces. If anyone wants to elaborate on any of those answers or has any clarifications, feel free to shout them out.
This is Chris again, and I'm going to add that I think what you're giving us is a selection of alternatives among existing types of mechanisms that the city of Denver has arrayed and made available and tends to be pursuing. But I think there's a whole level of additional types of methods of working with homelessness that have yet to be explored by the city of Denver. That even a lot of our peer cities that we look to for a lot of things like Portland and Minneapolis have already started to explore. So I'm very reluctant to vote on any one of these because I don't think Denver has really done more than scratch the surface in terms of creative approaches to handling long-term issues of homelessness.
Do you have specific ideas in mind that Denver could be pursuing that maybe some of the other cities are doing?
Well, one thing, I'm going to take the AIA-sponsored course this weekend at Auraria. Are you familiar with that? I forgot what that is called, but I have my notes. I'd have to go and search them, but it's very interesting. But it's designed to get people in creative professions, architecture, landscape architecture, involved in helping with the solution to much of this. But I'll give you an example. I don't find that erecting ice tents like you would do on the lakes in Minnesota is a long-term or viable approach, even if we did 40 of those around the city, that there's many other better options than insulated winterized tents. But I'm not so sure Denver has even gotten to the point of going there or examining what other new options or better options there really are. So therefore, I'm very, very hesitant to cast a vote for any one of these.
And I will say that these are temporary shelter models that, you know, like on one of the previous questions, we do want to get those experiencing homelessness into permanent supportive housing. But these are just options for temporary shelters before someone gets into permanent supportive housing, just to clarify that.
Right. It would be too much for me to elaborate on some of my thoughts, but maybe I could actually send you emails with some of my thoughts because I have been following up with research on this. My background is architecture.
Okay.
And,
yeah.
And I know that the architecture community is sort of in different places right now in terms of examining this from where the city planning in the city of Denver tends to be right now. And I just don't think Denver, we've kind of hit the nail on the head yet with viable, workable methods that are really going to be able to tackle it on a scale basis.
Yeah, please. I mean, feel free to send me an email.
Okay.
If you're so inclined. I can put my email in the chat too.
Thank you, Libby.
I wanted to ask a question about the tiny homes. I'm not, I mean, it sounds kind of nice in a way. I mean, obviously these are temporary. I was just wondering if there are tiny homes anywhere in Denver where, you know, that housing model has been implemented and is in use.
Yeah, I believe there are some, maybe up in Globeville and Elyria, Swansea, where they had some temporary tiny homes. I think a lot of times, I know in other cities, they're also used for like homeless veterans specifically. But yes, I do believe we have, I'll have to find out exactly where it is, but I do believe there was a tiny home kind of village constructed in Denver. But I think it was probably like in Globeville, I want to say.
So-
I can answer that. We do have one, but they're just for sleeping. They don't have bathrooms or plumbing or anything. So they're similar to the safe outdoor camping places. It's a shelter, but they don't have private kitchen or private restrooms or anything. They have temporary shower situations and stuff like that, but it's operated by the same people that operate the same safe outdoor spaces.
And do you know where, Councilwoman, that is within the city?
Yeah, it is up in Globeville and it's moving, and it's
Okay.
going to be moving to we just approved the contract with Colorado Village Collaborative. It's moving to city-owned property.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Not to rush us, but I did just receive the message from Scott to start heading back to the large meeting room. But if you have any last thoughts you'd like to share, anything at all, please do. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time and hanging out with us in our room and chatting. I really appreciate you guys not only taking the time to fill out the poll, but being willing to take yourself off mute and have a discussion. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
See, I think if you click leave room, it'll take you back to the main area.
Yep.
Go to the plan website. There's plenty of information on there about the plan and what's going on.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
If there's comments that people made or questions that are in the chat, are those going to be addressed after the meeting?
Yes, we will.
People after the fact have questions, or there's items in chat that didn't get addressed?
Yeah, and if you have any questions that don't get addressed, there's a comment form on the website. If you go to the plan website, again, near Southeast or denvergov.org/near Southeast plan, you can submit comments that way and we'll respond and answer questions that way as well. All right, folks should be coming back here in just a minute. All right, I think everyone should now be back in the meeting. So we'd like each group, if each facilitator can give us sort of the most important thing that your group discussed. We want to keep this quick so folks can get out of here by 7:30. But if we can do that, let's start with Goldsmith. If the Goldsmith neighborhood would like to share quickly.
Of course. So I think the main theme that really ran throughout our discussions was the need for affordable housing that remains affordable housing. We talked a lot about how housing that may be affordable today, those prices may escalate over time. So ensuring that any housing that's being added is keeping that affordability into the future.
Great, thanks, Aiden. If Indian Creek would like to go.
Yeah, so what we talked about in Indian Creek is there's a lot of Indian Creek that is really built out, and there are only a few key places where we're likely to have development in the future. So there was a lot of conversation about the corridors, some of the challenges that are facing the corridors today in terms of accessibility and mobility, and then looking at opportunities to reposition sites, also to create some affordability, greater diversity in housing types. And there was an openness to greater density transitioning back to existing built neighborhoods.
Thanks, Eric. I just put in the chat the link to the form. You can go put your email in if you want a chance to win a $20 gift card to Target or a local restaurant in near Southeast. We'll do a drawing after the next meeting on the 10th. You can do that while we finish up the wrap up. University Hills North, if you'd like to share.
Oh, sorry. So we actually combined with Goldsmith because of our numbers.
Okay, great. Thanks, Libby. Virginia Village.
Yeah, Scott, I'll just add a little bit here. We talked a lot about maintaining the neighborhood character and also kind of creating safer environments, specifically along corridors. Evans was mentioned quite a bit. And then also kind of the inclusion of more kind of smaller public open spaces. So maybe more wider landscape and kind of open areas for folks to enjoy.
Thanks, Jason. I just realized I was sharing the wrong screen there. All right, so like I said, go to the link, enter your email for a chance to win. Thank you, Jason. And then I think we had Cortland in Washington, Virginia Vale.
Yeah, so I think a theme of our conversation in Washington, Virginia Vale was similar to what Jason just said. Maintaining the existing character of the neighborhood. And so some ideas that were given by the participants in that group included an interest in basement accessory dwelling units as a way of allowing more residential without changing the look and feel of the neighborhood. Also limiting the size or scale of new development so it fits in better. So an example of that is that there's a lot of areas in the neighborhood that have single story character. So if a new house was built that was multi-story, that would start to impact that. So there's a desire to try to make everything fit in with the neighborhood as it looks today.
Thanks, Cortland. And we just had a couple folks that stayed in the area-wide section, but similar discussion. We had a lot of discussion around the need for more housing, but how to make sure that fits in with the neighborhood and doesn't negatively impact the folks who already enjoy living in near Southeast. So with that, we will, what is that? Okay, give me just a second on the, anyone can respond. Okay. I think I fixed the form. Try it again. I'll put the link again in the chat. Sorry about that. I forgot to check a box. Okay, thank you everyone for participating tonight. Sounds like we had some really good discussion. Really appreciate your patience earlier in the meeting when we had the trouble with the breakout rooms. We will try to get that fixed. For our next meeting, which as I said is Thursday, March 10th. So encourage you all to join for that again for discussions around mobility and parks and landscaping and sustainability. As I mentioned, the surveys are on the website, denvergov.org/near southeast plan. If you have questions, there's a question form on there you can submit and we will respond. Lots of opportunities to participate coming up. So we hope you will do that and tell your friends, tell your neighbors to participate as well. With that, I will let everyone go. Just a couple minutes past 7:30. Have a beautiful Tuesday evening, and I hope to see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you all for doing this. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for joining.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.